Hey, what's up? So the other day I was talking to my friend who's a girl, and she was telling me how she was talking to her friend who's also a girl, and during that conversation she discovered that she had pretty privilege. She being my friend, and she was like, I never realized I had pretty privilege. I got so much free shit in my 20s, for example. I never noticed it, and I was like, huh. I don't know if I believe you. Not that she has pretty privilege, but that she didn't know she had it. By the way, pretty privilege is basically this idea that good-looking people have an easier life because other people are nice to them because they're good-looking, which makes perfect sense, right? The problem whenever time I read about pretty privilege, like online or on social media especially, is like it's always like a negative connotation. It's like, oh, how dare these people, or how unfair the world is. And to be honest, like that's kind of just how the world works. Like you're not gonna social justice warrior away pretty privilege, right? Because I mean, I think there's a correlation between like how tall you are and how much money you make. Obviously, it's not determinant of that thing, right? It's not like a direct cause and effect, but there's some correlation there. And it's not just amongst humans, amongst animals as well, right? Like you think about, nature. Like you look at birds, whoever has the brightest colors gets the girl, right? If you're a gorilla, whoever has the buffest gets the girl. Or like lobsters, like the biggest claw gets the girl. Like Jordan Peterson had a book where the whole chapter was talking about how there's a hierarchy based on claw size essentially, and they don't even fight over it because they just know that whoever has a bigger claw wins, and it's like a lose-lose situation if you fight. So, anyways, that's what pretty privilege is. I'm a big fan of it. I think it makes sense. I'm not. I'm a big fan of letting it exist at least. And anyways, I was thinking for girls, it's kind of interesting because girls benefit the most from pretty privilege because obviously they're pretty, but the problem is they have to pretend like they don't have it in order for it to work. Because if you are actively admitting that you have pretty privilege and taking advantage of it, then that's like a huge turnoff, and it's just like violently the other way. Everyone will treat you the other way, like really negatively, right? Why is that? I don't know. Maybe it's because if you're pretty, all the other girls are jealous of you, and all the guys want to get at you, but since they can't, they like they neg you or whatever. I don't know how it works, but basically, that's what I think. If you're a girl, you have to walk this fine line between hey, get benefits from pretty privilege, and also don't admit that you have it, right? So maybe my friend, uh, is playing that game, or maybe I think it's still a little too late, but maybe she really didn't notice it. Also, let's say for example you're hanging out with a baby, and let's say for example this is your friend's baby because you don't have any babies, right? And this baby is super annoying, but this baby is also very cute, right? Because the baby is cute, you're gonna have some extra level of slack for that baby, right? Versus if you're hanging out with a baby that's very annoying but also very ugly. Like you're gonna treat those babies a little bit different. You're gonna have a little bit more patience for the one that's cuter, right? And don't pretend like you're not. You just are. So basically, what I'm saying is the pretty privilege isn't really the fault of the pretty people. It's kind of like your fault, right? But then that baby's gonna grow up with that pretty privilege. She's not gonna know. People just treat her a certain way her entire life, and she might not even know she's benefiting from it because that's just normal to her. So I guess it's really possible for girls not to know that they have pretty privilege. But my point is, girls have this like line they need to balance where they can't admit or have to pretend like they don't have it in order to benefit from it, which is really weird. But for guys, I feel like it's okay to admit they can just do whatever they want. Like me, for example, like I admit I think I benefit from pretty privilege. In fact, I don't even know if my personality would work if I was ugly, right? Because I like to say things to people that are a little bit ambiguous, right? So I might say something to someone that I don't know that well, and I might be joking, but I might not be joking. But if I'm joking, it's kind of funny. If I'm not joking, it might make you uncomfortable, right? But because I rely on this pretty privilege, I hope more often than not people will think that I'm joking and it's gonna be funny. I'm trying to think of an example of how I do that right now, but I can't because it just kind of comes naturally. But I guess an example would be like this, right? It would be like it's not a good one. This is the best one I can think of right now. But it'd be like, let's say for example, you and I are hanging out, and something funny happens, and we make a joke about it, right? And then later on, you and I are hanging out with like four other people, and then something funny happens that's like related to what happened earlier, and then I would make a joke about it where you understand, and then nobody else does, and then you would think it's funny, and then everyone else would be like, this guy's kind of weird, right? But that's the risk I'm taking because I think it's funny, right? So like an example would be like, okay, let's say I have a friend who is I have a friend that we hang out with. I see him like every now and then. He's my good friend, and recently I've been making fun of him because he falls asleep early because he drinks too much and he falls asleep because he's old now, right? And that's like been the running joke the last few times I've seen him. And then we were at a party, and we have another friend who has a baby, and he was telling us, the two of us, about his the way that he splits his chores up with his wife. It's very 50-50. So like if he does all the work in the morning, then he can go out at night or whatever. And I was just asking him questions really specifically about his plans with his wife and how they split chores. But I was really referencing to how my friend falls asleep all the time. So I'd be like, oh, so if you do all the chores in the morning, like, can you get really drunk and fall asleep at 11:30? And then he'd be like, yeah. And I just kept asking him questions like that, where it was really obvious to my friend I was being fun of him, but to my other friend, he's like, no, not sure what I'm talking about. He probably thought it was weird because I was really interested in his story, but I really wasn't. I mean, it was interesting, I guess, but I wouldn't have asked that many questions, if that makes sense. I forgot what I was talking about now. Pretty privilege and oh yeah, so basically I can go out and admit that I have pretty privilege and I feel fine about it, whereas I don't think girls can do that. So that is a downside to pretty privilege. And I wasn't sure. I'm not sure. I guess these videos now, it's just I kind of start somewhere. I keep going until everyone loses interest on these tangents. But I guess I will end this with a lesson that you weren't expecting, because I wasn't expecting either. But my dad always tells me, hey, there's a positive and negative to everything, right? Not everything isn't 100% positive. Everything is 100% negative. So it's your job to look at the positives for everything. So hope this video was interesting. See you next one.